in the past, I've had a lot of women behind the scenes or working as crew, and I just find that my productions are way more efficient. We get things done. I'm a mom, I have 4 sons. I know about time management. I know the importance of scheduling and being strategic, and I think that carries through in film as well. And just being a mom, a woman, I don't know, I just feel like that translates well. And in terms of self-producing, we're not gonna wait around for someone to tell us it's okay.
Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart.
Indigenous women directors represent just 0.2% of all directors in Canada's film industry. Jules Koostachin wants to rewrite this narrative. This week, we dive into the work of Indigenous women in film and explore the challenges, triumphs, and power of storytelling. With her new documentary, Niimisak, Sisters in Film, Jules reveals how Indigenous women are producing their own narratives, honoring their film matriarchs, and demanding space in an industry that has long ignored their voices. I hope you enjoy the conversation. This podcast is brought to you by TELUS Smart Home Security. Secure, simplify, and easily monitor your home from anywhere using the Smart Home Security app. Visit telus.com/smarthome-security to learn more about Canada's most trusted security provider. Hi, Jules. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. Happy to be here.
So you have a new documentary out called Niimisak, Sisters in Film. It is a TELUS original. Not your first film, that's for sure. Not your first one. This is an interesting film. I learned a lot watching it. Why did you want to make this?
I think it was timely. There's a lot of us within the film industry struggling to break through. And I think this film is a testament to our resiliency and definitely kind of provides an inside perspective of what it's like to have to self-produce to create our work. So I feel like it's just definitely one of those stories or films that will create opportunity for dialogue, like important dialogue.
So if someone's listening right now, they're not, they don't understand film or how you even make a movie. A lot of us just watch a movie and don't even really think about who's behind the scenes, right? What do you mean by self-produce?
I think, in order for us to produce Indigenous stories, for the most part, we have to do it ourselves in terms of finding financing, talking to broadcasters and streamers. It's almost like we're constantly pitching our own stories. And I think that's why we're doing what we're doing. What I'm finding anyways, in terms of speaking to other filmmakers, is that many of us have had to self-produce our own work, meaning basically that people are not approaching us, that we have to approach others.
So is that a movie thing? Is that a woman thing? Is that an Indigenous thing? Is that all three?
I think it's all three. It's funny that you say a woman thing because, in the past, I've had a lot of women behind the scenes or working as crew, and I just find that my productions are way more efficient. We get things done. I'm a mom, I have 4 sons. I know about time management. I know the importance of scheduling and being strategic, and I think that carries through in film as well. And just being a mom, a woman, I don't know, I just feel like that translates well. And in terms of self-producing, we're not gonna wait around for someone to tell us it's okay. We'll be like, "Okay, if you're not gonna support me, maybe I'll just do it myself," And I think that's very much a woman thing.
I do too. And maybe women of a certain age also, right? I just find the older that we get, the more it's like, are you kidding me? I could have done this in 5 minutes. Why is it taking, you know what I mean? And you mentioned having, 4 sons. I have 3 teenagers. I get it. Like it's so interesting how we really can get it done. But when you go to work, and you're working in a world that is creative, and movie making is a creative endeavor. You're an artist. It's like I don't think that people expect that, oh, someone's gonna knock on my door one day and say, "Hey, Jules, come on, I got this, $1,000,000 production." Like, nobody expects a door to be, but when you've been around long enough and you've worked hard enough, it's kinda like, "Okay, well, do I have to, like, at what point?" Right? It must feel like that.
Of course it does, and I think within our own industry as well, once you break through, that seems to be the go-to person. They're like, "Oh, well, this person has done so and so and so, so let's hire them," forgetting the rest of the community that's working as well. So it's just I think that's in every industry and every community, right? Once you break through, then you're the go-to person. I mean, I would love the opportunity to work on someone else's production and be hired. Like, that would be great, so I don't have to worry so much about finding money to make something happen because, I don't necessarily wanna produce, but I do it out of necessity. Um, but I would love to have the opportunity. I feel like I've created enough work now that it shouldn't be an issue. Um
Well, this is it, right? You reach a certain point and it's like, I mean, really, do you need my resume or do you wanna just, like, look at the long list of films that I've created or whatever it might be, right? In the film, you talked about how for one of your films, you had an $800,000 budget and you shot it in 12 days. Okay, so that is I'm trying to I mean, I worked in television for a long, long time, and it's a totally different ballgame than the world you work in. Because in news, we just make the news that day for that night. But it's a minute and 30 seconds, a story, right? Like a film is very different. 12 days I can't even imagine what that was like.
Right, and it's so interesting, it's like, I get really down on myself sometimes, like, I feel like, "Oh, it's not as good as I wanted it to be, I didn't have enough time," and of course, yes, I did not have enough time, and I talked to my son, he's my oldest son, Asivak. He's a professional actor, he's worked with big directors and production companies now, and he goes, "Mom, you just need the opportunity. Look what you could do with little, like, with what you have," and, he goes, "I've worked with directors, and they have, you know, 1 day to do 3 scenes, and they get to do 3 shots and have fun and breathe through it." He goes, "You're rushing through everything because you don't have any other choice," Like, I think choice is a privilege sometimes, and so he's just, my guardian angel, that guy who works in film, and he just keeps my feet grounded, and he's like, "Mom, don't be down on yourself, look what you're able to do." But then the other part of it is I don't want people to think, you know, "Oh, she could do that, so she can continue doing that."
Mm. It's so interesting. S So in your film, in this new film, you talk about, well, you honor you honor film matriarchs. Um, and I mean, who are some of your I mean, I don't know who do you look up to in the film world?
I look up to a lot of filmmakers, I think, Alanis being one for sure. I've just known her forever, so just seeing what she's been able to accomplish, but she's also kind of in a different situation where she's had this big engine of National Film Board behind her, right? I don't have that. I'm, like, seeking financing, so I don't have that, stability in terms of having, someone fund my project, so it's a little bit different. Um, I mean, there's a lot of us out there that are doing such amazing work, especially with Indigenous cinema, but this person is not Indigenous and not a woman, but I really, really enjoyed the film Sinners. I came out of that film being, like, completely blown away that we saw so much representation on the screen, and then there's a lot of cultural stories in there with the Choctaw starting the story, and I don't know, it's just like I feel like cinema, um, is going in a whole new direction because we're provided that opportunity and the doors kind of left open for us, or some of us, and see what we could do, right? Like, we could do a lot, if given the chance, right? Anyway, and then there's Taika. I mean, there's a lot of makers that I just adore, and more so just listening or hearing about their stories and their challenges and how they were able to break through. And then also, thinking about Alanis and how she's even changed legislation with her films, like people are talking a lot about impact producing, which I understand the necessity of it. But I think as Indigenous folks, we're doing that anyway. You know what I mean? We're informing, educating with our stories, right? So, yeah.
You spoke to the young filmmaker who's at UBC in Sisters in Film, and
Kira.
yeah, and she was just so like it was very obvious that she has learned so much from you, right? And you have learned so much from and but we don't often get to hear each other's stories. So when we hear them, now you have this documentary that everybody is going to have the opportunity to see. What sort of message do you hope others get from it?
I think is maybe think about your methodology, like story agency, and it has the power to change perspective. As we know, I'm sure all of us have engaged with a film in our lifetime that has just changed the way that we thought about the world. And I think with this one, methodology, like the process of creating, is just as important as the finished product. So with Kira and Kaya, like having the younger folks come into the circle, I think it's really important to hear their side of the story and what their struggles are and how we have cleared the path for them. They have to be part of the dialogue. Like that is such an Indigenous way of telling stories, right? And then I know Kira was nervous about interviewing me. Like she was so sweet. She just looked so nervous. And I was like, you can totally do it. Why not? Like, I don't understand why you're nervous. Just like, oh my God, it's a big responsibility. And I'm like, you can totally handle it. And I loved what she brought forward in her interview, being an academic, right? And just like her theory and understanding of Indigenous cinema. Like, and she's so articulate, right? Both of them, like, Kaya as well. Like, it's just so enlightening and inspiring to hear the younger generation and what they're, thinking about doing or are doing already. Like, I mean, that's what it's all about, right?
Well, and it's how we learn, right? We forget that sometimes. But if we're struggling with something and then we hear somebody tell their version of how they've struggled with the same thing, maybe at a different time or place, it gives you pause where you can go, oh, okay. It's like your son and his little talk to you, right? Like he has a different view of things too now that he's out in the world and he can say, Mom, come on, like, and we're so lucky that we have the opportunity to share stories with each other. It is what about discrimination when it comes to making films? Um, have you like do you experience that, or if you're making only Indigenous films, do you not experience that?
I'm open to making all kinds of films, right?
Yeah.
And some get tokenized, right? Well, you only do these things or that, right? I remember being on set and it was like I went to grab food and then someone told me, "Well, you can't be grabbing food before the transport guy, blah, blah, blah." And I thought, that is so bizarre. I guess I've worked in native film for so long that women and elders eat first, not the men, you know what I mean? Like, so you find that there's like these cultural differences when you work in Indigenous film too, and we always acknowledge the land that we're on. We get an elder or a knowledge keeper to open our day. We have the medicines there. And I think also too, being a woman and a key creative and a director and a producer, I call the shots. So if there's anything problematic happening on set, I can deal with it right away. Um, and that's the power you have when you have your own set, right? When it's your production company, is that you can do things differently than mainstream. Mainstream, I think it's just like it feels sometimes like a work engine. People are just there and they're working, and then you look around and sometimes you see people look pretty miserable, like they're not enjoying their job, and I'm like, wow, you guys must be getting paid a lot of money or this or that. And then, but on my films, I find when people join the force, they're like they have a really good time. They're like, "Yeah, Jules, I'll work for you." I mean, it's like half my pay that I normally get in mainstream, but they have a really good time and they're treated with respect and care and love, and I feel like that's the difference. In terms of discrimination, I think that's always gonna happen, right? Being a woman, I've been on sets too shadowing, and I've seen people trample on women or, just always and I'm like, "Oh, that just drives me bananas," and I have to bite my tongue because 'cause I'm like, "Why are you doing that?" Like, even for myself, like, I'm very selective of who I work with because it's still very much like, you know, male-centric, white male-centric, who, hold a lot of power and decision-making power and won't move over, won't give up their seat, as Jesse says in the film, and that makes it hard too because we offer so much and then we're always being second guessed. That just drives me bananas, right? It's just like, why do you do this? Why are we here? We just like, checking a box. You got your quota. You got enough women on the set. I don't know. Like, I just feel like there needs to be more meaningful change for sure in the industry.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I know in the film, you reference the 2023 Women in View report. Yeah, and so just, I mean, so if we look at Canadian film and television, Indigenous women represent only 0.2% of directors. 0.2. And Black women in Canada have similar representation. White women in Canada represent about 48% of directors.
It's so funny when you ask about discrimination. I'm like, I can see it holistically. I can kind of understand systemically, when we break down those stats. But me personally, on an individual level, it's like, I don't even get invited to the conversation. So it's those stats seem so far away because I do know a lot of people who are working and they are white women, but they would hire them over me, or I would get a shadowing position. And then once I shadow, it's like I could totally do this with my eyes closed. You know what I mean?
One of the things that I really appreciate about Sisters in Film is that, these little glimpses where it's like, aha, yes, okay. And I can, and just listening to you talk to, just watching a bunch of women talk about their experiences, there's a lot of value in that for everybody, for people to see it from your view, from people to see it from an elder's view, from a young person's view. And so it opens it up. Um, was it hard to make this film? Hard being like in the grand scheme, this is different. This is a documentary. It's not scripted. I know you do both, but can you maybe walk us through what it was like to make it?
Yeah, I think for me, I really wanted to be a little bit more experimental in a group shoot, and we just didn't have the money to do that. Like, I was gonna have all the women come together in studio and circle, and I was just gonna have a lot of fun with it, and that was gonna be our thread, through the interviews, and, like, that's the other reality, right, is just not having enough money to make those creative choices. So I think that was probably the most difficult thing was just like, "Oh, man, really?" Like, "Someone please just come and help," right? And then, okay, so we gotta just make do with what we have. It's heavy in interviews. What are we gonna do? We need some B-roll. Like, you're just always kinda trying to make things work. Um, that was difficult, because I really, really wanted to bring everyone together with Alanis. Like, I thought that would been such a treat, have everybody in circle with her, and then, because that's the payoff, right, is the circle of women. And I think also too, another thing that we didn't necessarily touch on, or did we in the film, was age, getting older. As a woman, ageism is a big deal. It's like, here I am, I've raised my kids. I've been a mom since I was 20. I'm in my 50s, and it's like, I am ready to work. I'm ready. My kids are all grown or at university now, the youngest, and it's like, now I'm too old.
No, I listen, I'm in the exact same situation as you. My kids are teenagers, they're a little bit younger than yours. I'm in my 50s. And honestly, you're speaking my language 100%. I get it. One of the things that we'd like to do on the podcast is thank our guests for being here. And we asked them to choose a registered Canadian charity of their choice. You chose the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. We love them. We've had Phyllis on this podcast before. And we will make a donation in your name as a thank you for you being here, Jules. So thank you so much for choosing the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. So how do we step out of Indigenous women? How do we make it so that not everybody has to worry about self-producing? How do we create meaningful opportunities for up and coming filmmakers, Indigenous women filmmakers?
I think if we're going to have observer or shadowing opportunities, that should lead to an episode, directing an episode. I feel like because I think many of us within the BIPOC community are shadowed out. You know what I mean? There's almost shadowing to do. It's like, okay, can you give us an episode now, or find another way, a strategic way to get us to direct and make some money. And, that's the other thing too. It's, the industry's been taking quite a few hits. So it's been difficult. So we need to work as well. And I understand why people who finally break through are like, well, I'm not moving. You know what I mean? I'm comfortable. But then again, it's like, okay, so we need to find another way that works for everyone, and I think that's why for me, my responsibility is to ensure that I'm not just, I mean, there's always production assistant positions on my films, but I also give people meaningful positions too. Like, for example, when I did my film Kaya Meta, which is on CBC, but that film is about menopause from an Indigenous lens. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
No, I haven't seen the film, but I did what did her fans say? An elder with a, what did her
Oh,
fans
well, she's
say?
a hot elder. But one of my students, I think she was 18 at the time, and I hired her as my first AD. Like not a PA, as a first AD. And she was phenomenal. Like she was nervous, just like, Kira was, but I'm like, you can do it. I'm here. I'm not going to let you fail. Like, I'm not going to treat you badly and support you. I'm going to care about you and I'm going to make sure you succeed. That is my job.
Yes, exactly right. Can you imagine if everybody spoke like that? It's so true, right? And when Kira, you're right. When Kira, when she interviews you in the documentary, she was so good, and I knew she would be. But she she had you there, and of course that was nerve-wracking. I would have been nervous if I was her too, to be interviewing the person who is making the film that you are in, who was just, you know what I mean? Like, that is intimidating no matter what, even with your encouragement. But what an opportunity for her that she will remember for the rest of her life. It's documented too. And she will always be able to reflect back on that. And I have no doubt that she will pay that forward one day. Do you know? She will do that. I know she will, because you taught her how to. And I think that other people will watch that part of the film and also know that they could do that somewhere in their life, whether they're a filmmaker or not. Like, you can hold somebody up and do that. And there's so much value. School can't teach you that. Like, that's huge value for everybody. So is it mentoring? Is that it? Is it more mentoring that we need? Should that fall on? That doesn't just fall on Indigenous women filmmakers to start mentoring other women, right? This is like, come on, everybody needs to step up here.
Yeah. Like, I think it's protocol for me is that you invite everybody into the circle. You don't exclude anyone. And I feel like that was something that I've been taught growing up. And again, it's like a methodology. It's your protocol. It's how you want to make films. And if you're a producer, you can make those choices. Nobody's telling you to do otherwise. And I think that's where the power is in being a key creative. That's the power in self-producing, even though self-producing is really challenging and hard, and you don't always get the support and the money that you need to make your film, but you can at least do the best that you can, right? And I feel like when you have people on set who care about you, who are there because they're excited to be there, that changes the vibe on the set. Remember I was telling you when I was watching other people on other sets, they just looked miserable. It was just like, oh, they were overworked, they were tired, they didn't feel appreciated. They still wanted to be part of a creative process, but they looked drained. For me, it's like I want everyone to feel like they're part of the story in some way, because it takes like the whole community to kind of get ready for a ceremony, right? And story can be seen or understood as ceremony, and everybody has something to do to add to it. So I feel like that applies well to film. And that's why things happen efficiently because people want to be there.
Right. Absolutely. So the film, Niimisak, Sisters in Film, it's available for everyone to see it on the TELUS Originals website starting June 20th. But are you showing it ahead of time?
Yeah, it'll be screening in Toronto June 8th at Imaginative Film Festival and also at a Simowin Film Festival, which I believe is in Saskatchewan. Tristan's film is in the film. Her festival will be screening it as well in June.
And so what do you say to people as they look for your film and watch it, and where do you hope with this film, what do you hope it achieves?
I just really hope people, regardless of their cultural background, think about methodology, think about different ways of creating work, think about how to be more inclusive. Like going back to Sinners too, that the DP, I believe, wasn't she pregnant? And she was one of the first women cinematographers to work with film. Like that is what it means to create meaningful opportunity, is just hire us. We have a lot to offer. We're talented, we're creative, smart. Just give us a job. See what we can do.
Your website has all your details, is Jules, which is Jules. So Jules Koostachin. And that's KOOSTACHIN.com. And you're also on Instagram at Jules Koostachin. And yeah, the film, June 20th, TELUS Originals website. You are great, Jules. Thank you so much for this conversation. I learned a lot from you.
Chimigwech, thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.